Okay, we're going to start the shiur. This week is Parshas Vayakhel-Pekudei, and we read from after Parshas HaChodesh. So in the end of the shiur, which I normally would talk about the haftar, I think I'll talk on the maftar, Parshas HaChodesh, and the chiddush that comes out from the Ramban in HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, Rosh Chodeshim. We'll talk about that. Then I would also like to talk about the Iyar of the shiur will be on something that's nogeya, what the Ramban talks about in the beginning of the parsha when they discusses after it says Vayakhel Moshe as called Adas b'nei Yisrael. It says Vayomer Aleim Moshe said to him Eile hadvarim asher tziva Hashem la'asos. These are the things which the Ramban explains is that after HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the luchos shniyos, Am Yisrael was chozer back to Dargos Rishon, and they're right to have the Beis Hamikdash, the Mishkan, the Beis Hamikdash should be a makom where the Sheni should be shabason, and therefore it says he is mitzav again on all the inyanim of the asiyas Mishkan. Eila advarim asher tziva Hashem la'asei. Some referring to the asiyas Mishkan, but the prat in the asiyas Mishkan is it's not for all 7 days. Here it says Sheshes Yomin Teyasam Malacha Uvayim Hashvi Yelechem Kodesh, which Shabbos shabason Hashem Kol Ha'iseh Boy Malacha Yumas. That the pasuk tells us that Binyan Beis Hamikdash is not Doicha Shabbos, and therefore they only did the Binyan Habayis, the Asiyas HaMishkan, Sheshes Yomin Teyasam Malacha, the Yom HaShvi not. Then afterwards, the psukim say, the pasuk says, one of the, what we refer to as the lamites melachos, Chazal tell us that lamites melachos are Torah, and it's learned out from that all the melachos that were done in the Mishkan, those are the melachos that are also to do on Shabbos. And then it specifies one of them, sevaru eish, a person shouldn't light a fire. So it says what we call Melechet Havara, as a double Havara, which the Gemara has a machlokes tanoim. What it comes to say is it to teach us Havara lechalak yatzos, that Havara is a malacha b'fnei atzon you're chayav for asiyas Melechet Havara, even if you didn't do the other melachos. So it's something to tell you that you can be chayav al kol malacha bifnei atzmai, even though it's nasis, even though it happens with what we call b'hala machas, with one shicha, with one forgetting. Meaning, if I forgot that it was Shabbos hayoy, I once knew that all melachos asuras, or I forgot these melachos asuras. If I forgot the Shabbos hayoy, really it's only one korban. But if I forgot these melachos were asuras, and I didn't remember in between anything about melachos and mutaris, and I did Zriya, Ksira, Charisha, Ma'amer, Dash. I did each melacham chayav kol achas b'fnei atzman a korban. That's learned out from sevaru eish. Just like you see, Havara is one malach and it stands b'fnei atzma. So you're chayav alav b'fnei atzma. Who did the kol malach? That's called that the Gemara term. It says lechalak yotzos. That's one mandamer. The other mandamer, Rav Yossi holds that it's lelav yotzos. It's not a malacha gemura that would have the chiyuv kare skila if it's eidim vasra for mezid. It would be only a lav. You'd only be over a lav if you're over lo sevaru. Very interesting. Because according to Rav Yossi, you only have lamed ches malachas. But Parshas, all the lamed ches malachas are going to be chayiv aleim b'mezid basra skila b'mezid b'lasra kares. And here we see that Rav Yossi learns in the pasuk lo sevaru. They have an exception to the rule. One of them is not going to be have a chiyuv korban b'shoigeg, have a chiyuv mezid basra of skila, and that's l'chor not from the lamites malachas. Ad kedei kach that the Chasam Sofer holds that that's the makor for shitas Ramban, that Shitas Rambam learns that Rav Yosi, and a whole another sugya, Rav Yosi learns that there are two melachos in Kosev, two separate avos melachos. There's something called Kosev and there's something called Roishem. And Roishem, according to the Ramban, the Parshas, according to Rav Yosi, is a separate one of the avos melachos. And you could have asked, where's this extra malachim? It's always lamitas malachim. It says the Chasam Sofer, hey name advarim. Rav Yosi who holds the sevaru eish is only a lav. So he has another av malacha of Roishem, that's nimnis is an av bifnei atzmo, you can be chayav on the bifnei atzmo. Okay, I'll upon that's a chiddush from the Chasam Sofer to answer up Rav Yosi Shita. But upon those are two man da'omrim, either Havara lav yotzas or Havara l'chalak yotzas. The Ramban explains Pasha Dekra to mean something else, and then he brings him a core from a mechilta. He says the Ramban, and I'm going to read here in today's shiur a few very important Rambans. Inyan HaKosav Azeh, the inyan of this pasuk of sevaru eish. Vadai le'eser b'Shabbos gam melachos oichol nefesh. To tell you even melachos oichol nefesh are aser. Right? It says koloitza b'melacha yumas. So yeah, I want to tell you it's also afilu la'afois u'lavash basar. Because the eish is used for meichel, and also the eish is used for other things. He brings a mechilta. Reb Nissan Amar lo sevaru eish lama nema lefi shehu oimer v'Yaakov Moshe kol adas b'nei Yisrael. It says in the Gagdama of the Parshas Vayakhel Moshe kol adas b'nei Yisrael. Shomei ani, I would have thought Yehei Rashai, it would be proper, allowed. Lahalik lo yisaner, lahatun lo yisachamim. I can be malik aner, I can be matmin chamim, I can go ahead and do hatmana and chamim. Parshas, it means even in coals that I'm going to be grama Havara. Ula'asos l'madur b'Shabbos, I can make a fire in Shabbos to be nether from the eish. So that's the pasuk of sevaru eish. Now, he says the Ramban, why didn't he say legave afiyum bishul? Because that already in Parshas B'Shalach, it's clear that it's also afiyum bishul. So he wants to tell you that even things that have any hana gufa, you would have thought that's not beklal the isser. Kamashman is beklal the isser. Avadayin kol melachos she'adam nana behem. A melachos that person has a direct hana from them. The einim oisin ela hana leguf. Gon halakas adnera medura. Rechitzas gufa b'chamen. Lighting a fire to use the eish. For heating. To wash your body. Yemutaris kizeh ma'oimek Shabbos. You might say that it's huter ma'oimek Shabbos. Ma'oimek Shabbos is muter lekach omer. That's why it says lo sevaru eish le'asar kol. To even that's also. So over here in this parsha, you would have thought that we would have been mater those type of melachos that were directly oimek Shabbos. Direct malachas of Oneg Shabbos to be mutter, kamash malon that's not going to be mutter. And it seems to be Havara is very clearly direct for malachas that are Oneg Shabbos, kamash malon even that not. But it comes here in the mechilta that the Ramban brings down and starts off with a Havdama. It's because it says in the pasuk Vayakhel Moshe kol adas b'nei Yisrael vayomer aleihem. So you would have thought that it would have been mutter afil melachos that are adam neme mehen kamashma lo sevaru eish. Meaning, I have to say that melachos and adam neme mehen is going to be usher because I would have thought from the pasuk Vayakhel Moshe kol adas b'nei Yisrael that it would be mutter, and it's a dvarim lahafli. What is the first pasuk? Vayakhel Moshe kol adas b'nei Yisrael, which the Ramban already tells us that that's talking about he was makel them to be oisek in the binyan Mishkan. You would have thought that Kilu was nisbatel. No, kamash alon. After HaKodesh Baruch Hu gave the luchas shniyas, Yisrael zechoizer lema'alason, and they were ruined that the HaKodesh Baruch Hu should masha the shchinim b'soicham, and therefore they should be ready to be boime on Shabbos. They should be boime not on Shabbos. They should be boime the Beis HaMikdash. The hemshech is that on Shabbos not to boime the Beis HaMikdash. But what is Vayakhel Moshe as kol adas b'nei Yisrael? Bring on what we call a havamina, atzad, the impossibility to understand the psukim that malachas of Oneg Shabbos should be mutter. That pasuk's talking about the binyan of the base of Mikdash, of the Mishkan, where in there lies a havamina, the melachos Shabbos of Oneg Shabbos. It's zvorim lahafli. It's a difficult thing to understand. This Ramban is bringing from the mechilta. So I want to give a possible answer, a possible mahalech in this, but with a few hakdamas. Number one, we have to be makdim. What does it mean, Vayakhel Moshe es kol adas b'nei Yisrael? Up till now, when it talked about the binyan Mishkan, it said b'nei Yisrael. And the Ramban himself is oimed on that when it says adas b'nei Yisrael. And the Ramban says, because it wants to be marbe, also noshim. That way it uses the lashon of adas b'nei Yisrael is to be marbe afilu noshim. Because beforehand it talked about the inyan of binyan abayis, binyan mishkan. It didn't say anoshim, or he said just b'nei Yisrael. But here, kikulam hisnadvu b'melachos mishkan. So therefore, he wanted to say now the kilul of kol eda anoshim v'noshim, and therefore, since kulan hisnadvu, all of them are b'chlal v'chiyuv. Vayakhel Moshe es kol adas b'nei Yisrael v'yomer lem eila advarim. So even noshim are b'chlal. That's the adas b'nei Yisrael. So therefore, this parsha has an emphasis of noshim. Vayakhel Moshe es kol adas b'nei Yisrael. Maybe that plays a role to the hemshech of Shabbos with noshim. Let's see if we can make some type of connection with that. Agav, I just want to speak out. This that we're saying that the Ramban learns out that noshim are b'chlal. It's mashma that be'etzem from the b'niyas base hamigdash, b'niyas hamishkan, noshim wouldn't be b'chlal v'chiyuv. And obviously, it's understood why they shouldn't be b'chlal v'chiyuv, because we're not boime mikdash b'layla. We're not boime b'layla, so we're not boime b'layla. So you might say that noshim are not going to be b'chlal v'chiyuv, because it's a mitzvah asei shehazman grama. It's not an shehazman grama, it's a shehazman grama. Therefore, we have to say a special reboot, that noshim b'chlal v'chiyuv, meaning an exception to all the rules. You have exception to the rules. This is going to be one of those exceptions. And Bemis, the Rambam says very similar in Hilchos Beis HaBechira in the beginning of Sefer Avodah, Perak Aleph Halacha Yud Beis. Perak Aleph Halacha Yud Beis. V'hakol chayav, in the middle of the halacha, livnois u'lesayed ba'atzman u'b'mamoinan anoshem v'noshem kemigdash hamidbar, like the migdash in the midbar. Meaning, be'etzem, I would have said noshim ar bechlal. But since you see in the Torah that the Torah says that they were mitzaref to the migdash hamidbar, so from there you see noshim ar bechlal v'chiyuv. Meaning it's an exception to the rule. That's what I think Pshat is in the Rambam. There are Achronim that want to learn ways to understand how could they be chayav chiyuv. Why is it not nechshav a mitzvah asei shehazman grama? There's an arichas advarim in G'dayla Achronim about it. But I think lahepech, it's an exception to the rule. And emechanami, you need a special limud, and that's what Moshe Rabbeinu says. Vayakhel Moshe es kol adas b'nei Yisrael. He saw that the noshim were misnadev, and he said, there is b'chlal the chiyuv of this inyan, because this is Mara, that the Shechina Shor B'neim, Noshim should be b'chlal that chiyuv in building that Mishkan, being part of that. Okay, but what would that have to do with Shabbos, and how does that connect with Shabbos? So this we still need more of a beer. So the very interesting thing in the psukim, when the psukim say here Shabbos, it says Sheshes Yomim Teyasem Malacha, Uvayoyim Hashvi Yelechem Kodesh Shabbos Shabason Lashem. So it says first the word kodesh, and then it says Shabbos Shabason Hashem. So in referencing the Dinei Shabbos, the issurim and Shabbos, here the psukim say kodesh, and then Shabbos Shabason Hashem. That's the psukim in Parshas Vayakhel. I'm sorry if sometimes I will look down because I just want to read from the psukim sometimes, and also from the Ramban. It says in Parshas Kisisa, before the Chet HaEgel, ki sheshes yomim yeyasa malacha, uvayoyim hashvi Shabbos Shabason kodesh Hashem. It says first Shabbos Shabason, then kodesh. Here it says kodesh, Shabbos, shabason. Two different things, kodesh, Shabbos, shabason. And then Vayakhel it says kodesh first and then Shabbos, shabason. And then in the Parshas of Kisisa it says Shabbos, shabason, kodesh l'Hashem. Haloi davar hu l'chor t'minyan. So I think over here there are common mekoimos that the Ramban says that kodesh is referring to the isser of asiyas malachos. It's referring to the chelik of Shabbos that we call the shmir of Shabbos. The isser of asiyas malachos, that's kodesh. Shabbos shabason, the Ramban in Parshas, Emor is ma'arich on what the inyan of kodesh kodashim, what the inyan of Shabbos shabason. But again, kodesh means the isser asiyas malacha, to be porish from malacha. Even by the parsha of the Brachos, there's a Vayakhel-Pekudei yoyim hashvi vayikadesh oisoi. The Ramban brings down from the Even Ezra that the Vayavarech is that we had what we call the neshama yisera. Vayakhel-Pekudei yoyim hashvi. So adavar noisav. Vayikadesh oisoi shelo also bo ha-malacha kishar yomim. He didn't do malacha. That's Vayikadesh oisoi. Chiddush, kedusha is prisha, and it's yadua in the beginning of Parshas, in the beginning, Tchilas Parshas, kedoshim to you, Chazal, Rashi and Chazal, perushim to you. So you separate, you don't do things bad, perushim to you. So therefore, isser asiyas malacha is lashon kodesh. Okay, that's one thing. What about Shabbos shabason? So over here, the Ramban says a tremendous arichos, how he explains in Parshas Emor, Perik Chav Gimel, Pasuk Chav Daled, Shabbos shabason. Shabason. He says shabason is yom shvisa lanuach boy, to be noch boy. And he says shabason asei. What's the asei? So therefore, we need a yom menucha, that we shouldn't be matriach kol hayom, limdoid hatvuos, ulishkol aperis, vamatonos ulemalachov visyayin. It's possible to go through the whole Shabbos, not do one of the lamites malachos, but not to be nachboy, to be oisik, to matriach kol hayom in business. Moedet tvuos, lishkol peris, ulefanos hakelim, to move kelim and avonim, and the makov they have in Erev. And therefore you do all types of things that would be mutter mitzad the daraisa shaboy, and tia achonos psucha v'ched v'limakiv v'shulchonoim al shulchonoi v'yeh poilim, and they can have workers mashkimim lemalachtem or maskirin atzma kechol. That's what you would think you can do. Lekacham l'Torah shabason sheyeh yom shvisa umenucha l'yom Torah. Shabbos Yom Tov is shabason. Shabason means that it's a Yom Menucha, not a Yom Torah. Agav, I want to mention here a tremendous chiddush that the Chasam Sofer in Halacha, in Chuvas Chasam Sofer brings out from this Ramban. He says, Luch Oira, if a person sits in his chanut, in a store, and he has it set up that he can go ahead and do things and sit there and be oisek in his misra, where he's not over, not only not issurim d'oraisa, but not even issurim d'rabanan. But his asik, yes, you have to be careful of what you say and how you say things. But he can create a situation where he didn't do any malacha. He sat in the store, worried about the store, thought about it, worked in it, let people take things, pay things in a way where he's not doing not only a malacha, maybe he's not doing a shvus. Says the Chasam Sofer halacha, he's a mumar l'chal Shabbos. He's a mumar that was mechal Shabbos. And a mumar l'chal Shabbos is mumar l'kol Torah kula. He was a lamdisha person who's oisik b'malachta. I'm sorry, I forgot to turn off my phone. I don't want to stop now in the middle. But he was a lamdisha. He had a lamdis to go ahead and to be oisik b'malachta without any isur malacha, without any isur d'banan even. Says the Chasam Sofer, he's a mumar l'chal Shabbos, and that's what he did all Shabbos. All Shabbos is oisek to kehilu. By him it was a yom chol. By him it's a yom chol. He's a mumar l'chal Shabbos. It's his day on Shabbos is not different than his every day of Chol, mumar l'chal Shabbos. And Agav, the Chasam Sofer brings down from the Maggid Mishnah that this mahalech of the Ramban and shabason, the Maggid Mishnah learns that in Shitas HaRambam also. So not only in Shitas HaRamban, but the Maggid Mishnah learns it in Shitas HaRambam. And therefore he says that Harbe Rishonim holding the holds your mumar l'chal Shabbos. If a person would do exactly what the Ramban says, the pasuk of shabason is telling you not to do. It has to be a yoim not of Torah, the yoim of shvis, a menucha, to be Shabbos and to be noch. And says the Ramban at the end of that, Shu yoim shvisa umenucha loy yoim tereach. And he says at the end of this, umimenu amar hanavi ma'asois drachecha mimtzoi chevtzecha v'daber dover. And there it says the kodesh of Shabbos Oneg. There the Navi says your chafatzim on the weekdays not on Shabbos not like the chol. Your dibur on Shabbos not like your dibur on the chol. And the hemshech is Oneg Shabbos. The kodesh of Shabbos Oneg. And the Ramban calls it. These are the essays of Shabason's essay. That's the essay of Shabbos. So you have the lois asei and you have the essay. And bemis the Ramban in Zochas Yom HaShabbos the Kachoy in the Psukim in Yisroy the Ramban says things in a similar vein. He says things in a similar vein that the shvisa beinenu is to that we should be ponoi from iskei hamachshavos v'hevli hazmanim v'loses by oimeg limnashenu b'darkei Hashem, meaning we have to be porish from malacha and that, but we should be ponoi to be turned the other way, to be noch from the inyan echol, and that we should have Oneg l'nafshenu, and Oneg Shabbos, and Oneg l'nafshenu. Whatever the concept of neshama yiseri is, that we are oichel yoiser, and there's such a thing of Shabbos as Oneg l'nafshenu. And therefore, that's the two things, I think, that's mentioned over here in the Pasuk. The Pasuk says, like we said, kodesh, Shabbos, shabason. Kodesh means the lo yisah says, like we said in the Ramban, parish, prushim to you, the lo yisah says, and shabason is the asei shaboy, to turn Shabbos into a yoim noch, a yoim that's not chol, a yoim that's kodesh, to be ma'anig with the Shabbos, to make it special Shabbos. So therefore that's the lo yisah says and the essence of Shabbos. I want to just flush out something similar, this type of concept, from the Ramban, because it's from the Ritva in Melechet Shabbos Daf Samach Tesam with Aleph. But the Gemara darshans that Noshim Zocher v'Shamar Dibur Echad Hami Neshei, that Noshim Hoyol v'Isnu b'Shmira, they're Bechlal Shmir Shabbos Delois. I said they're Bechlal Zocher, the mitzvah asei of the Chodesh Yom HaShabbos the Kachoy, that you should remember Shabbos. I did Kiddush. We talked about it. Kiddush is with kois. Kiddush is only b'dibur. I mentioned this in Parshas Yisroel. But that's Shabbos has two things. The noshim are mechuyev because the bechlal, the loisa, the bechlal. So it's very interesting that that's how the Torah should tell us the noshim are bechlal, the mitzvah of essays of Shabbos, even though they should be potter mitzvah grama. Even so, no, they aren't. They are not going to be. They are mechuyev to mekayim the essay because they're bechlal the loy says bechlal the essay. So I wanted to bring out here a tremendous chiddush from a Ritva. The Ritva brings down over here a dvar chiddush. The Ritva deals with the Gemara. The Gemara deals with how can you be over all lamites melachos and be chayiv lamites korbanos. Says you can be chayiv lamites korbanos. You're shogag. So the Gemara deals with how can it be they can have lamites chiyuve korbanos with lamites melachos. You have to know Shabbos for something, but it says if you're shogeg b'Shabbos, if you totally forgot that Shabbos, then you're not going to have a chiyuv of lamites. You only have a chiyuv one thing. You're shogeg b'Shabbos. You have to know it's Shabbos and still be over lamites melachos. So the Gemara deals maybe with eruv tchumim. The Gemara says different things. Ask the Ritva Ha'ara, what about Kiddush and Havdalah? So he speaks out. She'ein yediyah l'Shabbos b'nei Kiddush Havdalah. Maybe you know Shabbos to Kiddush Havdalah, so that's enough knowing it's Shabbos, but you forgot the lamites melachos, because he says Mipnei kiddush v'avdala v'oimeg achila, because he says, Im emi yodei yinit shvisa malacha shu ha'ikar. Mipnei kiddush v'avdala v'oimeg ha'maychel, because the kiddush and havdala and maychel al shem shavas v'yinafash. The yadala the grama zchira shel kiddush v'oimeg ha'maychel. You were Shabbos, you didn't do malacha on Shabbos, you didn't do melachos Shabbos, you stopped doing malacha, and that was going you to be zoicher Shabbos, aydei zechira of kiddush, havdala, oimeg ha'maychel. So you see from the Ramban, clear from the Ritva, the Ritva, that there's no place for the essays of Shabbos without having the loisas. So it's very interesting that's very likely the remez. Noshim, that are bechlal, the loisa says, noveya from the loisa says, is the essay of the chira. Because you were nafesh, you rested on Shabbos, you didn't do malachas, it brought on the essays to remember the Shabbos, to be misanig b'maychel b'Shabbos, because they're resting, the shvisa, the noch on Shabbos, the menucha on Shabbos is supposed to bring us to the other things, to be zoicha the Shabbos, to be misanig b'Shabbos, the nafshenu, and even an oimig maychel is mitzurif to all that. So that's what I think, right? That's the chiddush and the ritva. So the two dvarim together, I think we can say here a nekuda of chiddush, that the Hamdama, the Parshas and Vayakhel starts off. Vayakhel, Moshe, Kol Adas Bnei Yisrael, Noshim. Noshim are bechlal the chiyuvim of Bniyas HaMishkan. And we're referencing Shabbos, on Noshim and Noshim aren't bechlal. So when you're mentioning Anoshim v'Noshim aren't bechlal, so by Noshim, you have to talk about first the loisa says, and then the asei. Because Anoshim are going to have the mitzvah of Shabbos to the Gavi two things. The Gavi loisa says and essays, that, since we're talking about here in Akdama Vayakhel, and we're saying what they can't do b'niyas HaMishkan, that's on Shabbos. So Noshim are b'chlal, but we're referring to Noshim. So we start off, Yilechem kodesh, which is Isser Malacha, Shabbos shabason Hashem. Because by Noshim, they're also B'chlal Shabbos Legavi Shabbos shabason because of the Isser Malacha. Since they're B'chlal Isser Malacha, they're going to be B'chlal also the Kiddush boy. Because they're intertwined, they're not two separate things. That's not together the drasha, they're B'chlal Shmira, they're B'chlal Zchira, just like a Hekish or something. No, it's that it's integrally connected to two things. The Zechira and the Oimik comes from the Isser of Malacha that creates the Shvisa and the Menucha that brings on the positive things we do on Shabbos. To remember how special Shabbos, to remember what the Yichud of Shabbos, to bring Oimik l'nafshosenu, to concentrate on that what's special about Shabbos, and concentrate what we're supposed to get from Shabbos, bring Noch from it. And that's another davar that needs a beer and a musar in it. But that's what the pasuk's saying. And so by Baikis, he says not talking about Noshim. So you don't have to speak out. The Loisa says kodesh and then Shabbos shabason. But here they were talking about Noshim. We want to speak out kodesh. The Loisa says, and the essays that come out from the Loisa says, because that's the gather of the chiyuvim Noshim and all the mitzvahs of Shabbos. And Kisisa, we're not talking yet about Noshim. So Labadaf, we have to speak that out. Noshim have two chiyuvim, and you can mention. I mean, the Amish has two chiyuvim and Shabbos essays. And Loisa says, but you don't have to speak out how they're connected to each other. That's miyuchad in the Parshas Vayakhel. It could be. Now that we're saying that the whole Loisa of Shabbos is to bring out the essay. That's what we're saying over here. The Loisa says that to bring out the essay, to bring to Oneg. So you might have thought, when you speak it out like that you don't have the Loisa says, b'makam, it's in Mavato the Oneg. Because the whole Loisa says to bring to Oneg Shabbos. They're connected, intertwined. So if I day the Loisa say, you're not going to have Oneg Shabbos, so maybe you don't have the Loisa say. So that's why we have to say the possible is sevarish because Moshe said. So it follows. Since we're talking about Noshim Vayakhel, Moshe, Kol Adas Bnei Yisrael, and therefore I have to say the Loisa said before the essay. The teacher said the Loisa said brings on the inyan of Oneg, and the whole Loisa said the whole inyan of being Nachal Shabbos is to be able to do the essays, which includes the Oneg. So you might have thought that Oneg Shabbos is not going to be nichkas from melachos, because the whole inyan of the melachos is to give us the framework of mind to on what Shabbos is about and the importance of Shabbos. And the Oneg we're supposed to have on Shabbos is to be enough to have the Oneg Shabbos, and that's why we had a Havami that you have to speak out. No, we're not going to be matter to do melachos on Shabbos for the purpose of Oneg Shabbos. That's over here specifically. It has to speak that out. Okay, that's a Dvar Torah I wanted to say. I wanted to just end on the halach and then talk about Parshas HaChodesh. Very interesting. There's a big question that it brought down first in the Tshuvas of the Tzitz Eliezer Chelik Yud Aleph. I hope I'm saying right. I think it's Tshuva Mem Daled, if I remember correctly. Very famous, either Lamites or Mem Daled. Very famous Tshuva that he brings down the Shaila. If a person would go ahead and want to get on a bus in Eretz Yisrael with his Shabbos, where you know that the driver is Jewish, or a taxi where you know the driver is Jewish, so l'char you have a problem. The Chazal Misakin and Isser to do malacha before Havdalah, and they aren't going to do Havdalah. So if they're not doing Havdalah, so how can you go ahead and take them? You're being machshel them and doing malacha before Havdalah. And you Parshas even by Nissan Rabbanan, you have a problem to be machshel. And there are many talked about, but I've always thought to explain it. Lamai said all the places are matter it. All the places are matter it. I saw B'Shem Rav Moshe Feinstein, the rivers of Ephraim. Ephraim Greenblatt Zatzal says in the name of Rav Moshe that he asked Rav Moshe this thing, and Rav Moshe said that since they were Makabel Shabbos, they were never Makabel Shabbos, so there won't be the chiyuv of the Havdalah that creates an Isra Asiyas Malacha. I just want to say the oimik in that, Lefi the Ritva. The Ritva clearly says that there is no makom for kiddush and Havdalah if you don't keep Shabbos. It's all it comes out of keeping Shabbos is what are you supposed to do on the Shabbos that you keep and you don't do malacha is to have kiddush, Havdalah, Oneg. But if you don't keep Shabbos, there's no makom. So therefore, if you're talking about a Nakiloni who didn't keep Shabbos and doesn't keep Shabbos, doesn't keep the malachas of Shabbos, even if it would be traditional, but he's not keeping Shabbos, Kedash, Kedash, by him there's no Shabbos. Halachically, it's not a Shabbos. So therefore, you might say, so therefore, says Rav Moshe, and I think this is the oimik of Rav Moshe, there's no makom to have b'chlal the doraisa, if you hold Havdalah doraisa, the dorabana if you hold dorabana Havdalah, and therefore there would not be any isser, see it's malacha before him, because there's no makom to have chiyuv Havdalah. It would come out a tremendous chiddush, if that's true, and it would come out, not the person don't want to say, a chas shom, a person's a rasha, and all through Shabbos, he was still Mechal Shabbos. And then he was Choyzer B'tshuva right after Shabbos. And he says, Gefer, look what I did, and I'm becoming a different person, as Makabal of, should he make Havdalah or not? So the Fizeh would come out, he wouldn't have a Chiyuv Havdalah. It would be a big Chiddush. Halach, I don't mean to say, but I did see someone mention something along these lines. Maybe there's not going to be a Chiyuv Havdalah for such a person. Okay. I want to go on now to speak a little bit on Parshas HaChodesh. In Parshas HaChodesh is a tremendous chiddush from the Ramban, because in Parshas HaChodesh it starts HaChodesh is Elachem Rosh Chodashim. What does it mean HaChodesh is Elachem Rishon? HaChodesh is the lashon of the pasuk is the Perik Yud Beis pasuk Beis HaChodesh is Elachem Rosh Chodashim. Rishon hu lachem l'chad sheisham. It's Rishon hu lachem. What's this emphasis? Rishon hu lachem. So the Ramban says here a tremendous chiddush. He said Rishon hu lachem means that all the minyan of the Chodashim should be always from Nissan. Just like Shabbos, Ramban, and we talked about that by Yisrael, supposed to count Shabbos. Yom Rishon the Shabbos, Yom Sheni the Shabbos, Udin the Chodashim is Chodesh HaRishon from Nissan. Chodesh HaRishon from the Chodesh HaKosh Baruch Hu's Golos on the Mitzrayim. Chodesh HaSheni from the Gulas. And that's why it's referred to Chodesh HaShvi Tishrei. Even though the Ramban takes on that we pass in Kabbalah B'Tishrei Never Olam, and Chazal always referred to as Rosh Hashanah, that's the beginning of the year. So says the Ramban that we're passing like the Mandama that says B'Tishrei Never Olam, Afilu Achi, it's Chodesh HaShvi Tiyis Mitzrayim. Because Nissan became the Rosh Hashanah l'Chadashim. That's chodesh lechem. Rishnu lachem, to you, not absolute. Big absolute. It's the chodesh Shvi. Tishrei is the chodesh Rishon, but to you, to your yitziyah from Mitzrayim. Says the Ramban further. We have other shemus that's called chodesh Nissan, Adar, Tammuz. We find that he says shemus that were came to them that was olah mehem bebavel. It's the shemus that came from Bavel when they came up and they made by Sheni. Those are the shemus they used in Bavel to remember the nisim they had when they left Bavel. That's what the Ramban brings down. Those were the names that they called, and we brought them. And what it says, it was chazanu to call the name the fee what was called in Bavel. And very interesting over here, because and the Achronim really deal with this question. Like what we don't anymore call it chodesh Rishon, chodesh Sheni. So there's a machlokes. The Sefer Ikrim says, yeah, it was Necker. The Ikr now becomes the Geula from Bavel, and that's a davar shel pella. Geula from Bavel, not Geulas Mitzrayim. That's a Necker. And the Sefer Get Parshas brings down from the Baalin Yaakov, not like that, not like the Shitas of the Sefer Baalei Ikrim. And the Kemat Mefurish in the Drasha that the Ramban wrote in the Drasha Rishon Beferish, like those Shitas, that wasn't Necker. You have both. You get to use both. And he goes on, Al Yisrael Ein Lem Shem. The Yemei Shavu has no name. Who did the Chodashim have no name? Ki minig ha-Torah sheyimanu hayomim v'hachodoshim limitzos. That's the minig of the Torah, and therefore the shemus of the Yemei Shavu is like that. V'chein ha-Chodoshim, says the Ramban. Lo hoya lehem shem b'Torah, not in the Torah, v'lo b'Yisrael. Avhoy Yisrael oimim k'shem she'Torah meres. Yisrael didn't give it another name. B'chodesh ha-Rishon, v'hi b'sham ha-Shem is b'chodesh ha-Shvi. Those were the names. B'chodesh ha-Rishon, the Geula Seim Mitzrayim. And he goes further. What about the other names that we have? Nissan, Av, Sivan. He says other shemas that are olam imayim bebavel. V'loi neshana hashemas harishonim v'nishkach Geula Mitzrayim. Not that you change it, and now suddenly we forget about Geula Mitzrayim. Avol shenitztarif shemas bavel. Lohoidia uliskor shesham amadnu misham otzianu Hashem. So we have two ways, either with the Chodashim of Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, or those shemas to remember the Geula that we had from Bavel. Okay. That's what v'cholzeh nischadish ritziyasa in Mitzrayim, but the shemas of the Chodashim in the Torah before Yitzias Mitzrayim were Emechanami. It would have been not Lefi Nissan, but Lefi Tishrei. That's what Ramban says. And Halo Davarhu. It needs a beer. And the Achronim ask it, the Chasam Sofer already mayor it, and there are many who try to give the answers. We do have other names for the Chodashim. I mean, by Goyim we use other names. We call English November, December, and that's already, I think, in most languages being like that, or the romantic languages in Western Europe. Call other names of the months of the year. We have to be makbid not to call the names in the Chasam Sofer. It seems to be in Chumash. Yeah, it's a tochacha magula not to use other names. But Akol Panim, that is the minig in Yisrael. So I think over here at Vayakhel-Pekudei. Also, it's a nekuda here. The Ramban himself isn't moined as one of the mitzvahs. I think the Ramban saying here a davar choshev that there is no mitzvah miyuchad, but the mitzvah, the davar that is that Am Yisrael stays with the Torah calls the Chodashim, kodesh Rishon, kodesh Sheni. Because in Lashon HaKodesh, you don't have any other way to call it except kodesh Rishon, kodesh Sheni. Or the Chodashim are olim in Bavel. Now we have a whole say that we call it Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, v'chulei, to Adar, Nissan, the Chodashim that we're in now, Adar, so Nissan. So those are shemas that are all that became part of our lexicon, part of our safa of kodesh, of Lashon HaKodesh. So the Torah doesn't call it, the Chodashim says Chodesh Sheni. Am Yisrael doesn't call it anything else but Chodesh Rishon, Chodesh Sheni. And Lashon HaKodesh. If I would decide to call with other languages, maybe that's not also. The issuer would be to create into Lashon HaKodesh on these Chodashim. And it's a davar shel pella. It's a davar shel pella that Milishamayim Yotzakein, that even in the modern day Ivritim Uduberet, they don't have it's the names is of Elo v'chulei, or you use a Goyish calendar. That's not our Chodashim. We didn't create our Chodashim in any which way are going to be the Chodashim that the Goyim use. That's the Goyish Chodashim, and we're borrowing their usage of it. That might not be the issue. The din is that we in our language has to be Chodesh Rishon, Chodesh Sheni, or what we have is the Chodesh and Olam and Bavel that is masker the Nisim that Am Yisrael had during their Yomim in Bavel, which Parshas Be'ikr is the Nisei that will happen that we know during Megillas Esther and Parshas Madai. That another arichas on that, but Adkan, this is the two things I want to talk about the Inyan of the sevaru eish b'kol Moshe Seich and the Havamina that it would include that Lule this pasuk I would say that's mutter melachos of Oneg would be mutter, and number two this din of the HaChodesh HaChodesh is Elechem Rishon l'chot Shana. Everyone wishing everyone a good Shabbos, a good Parshas HaChodesh. And the Melechet Shem next week, I don't know if I'll be able to say shiur on Wednesday, on Thursday. I'll go away on vacation. If I won't say the shiur, it will be only for the week afterwards, which will be Erev Shabbos HaGadol. Okay, have a good Shabbos.